Okay, and I'm going to put myself on spotlight so that you guys can see what I'm doing. If I can find it here. There we go. Well, good morning, everybody. And we're going to tie scuds today for me anyway. So this is one of the finished patterns. I tied a bunch of them up in different color combinations. This is an olive one. This is a tan one. And I've got a couple of others that are a little bit different material for the back of the fly. This one has a kind of a shiny green material on the back. And this one's a tan with kind of a shiny silver material on the back. So I think you can play around with materials to get different shades and colors. But the basic premise is the same. These are little shrimp. Now the pattern I'm going to tie is the one that we talked about, where these guys, they call them pregnant scuds. They have an orange spot in the middle. And apparently it's not that they're pregnant, it's a parasite that they get, and it matures inside the scud before, when the scud goes, then it releases its progeny. So we're going to tie it. The basic material is a variety of hooks. Now I happen to have an inventory of these, which you probably can't get any, partridge shrimp hooks. But the thing with the partridge hooks is that it's size 14 is a giant hook. That's the size 18s here are, I'd say, just big. So the one I'm going to use is a size 14, which is probably in reality more like a size 12. And these partridge ones are a really heavy wire. So you'll be able to see when I get this hook in place. And the other nice thing about them is that these ones are barbless with a slightly offset point. Probably you can see there. The point's got a kink to it. Mm-hmm. So that's why I've been using those, because I have them in inventory. I don't know if you can get them if you go chasing them. But the alternative is the Hannock Czech nymph hook, which is a lighter wire hook. And this one's a size, this is a size 10. So you can see this size 14 partridge is about twice the gap. Anyway, we'll work with what I got. The next material that you're going to use is this guy here, which is guinea fowl, and that's for the tail. There's a little tail and there's a set of antennae out the front. So we'll use those fibers for that. The shrimp back, you can get this stuff called Scud back or stretch Scud material. This is an olive, and that's the one I'll use for the first fly here. The other stuff, I managed to pick these up a few years ago. It's called Magic Shrimp Foil, and it's an iridescent product. I have it in a few different colors. I don't know where you get that now. This is a Czechoslovakian product, so I don't know where you get it now. But I'll tie the one with the regular back. The materials.
Dave,
yes.
Dave, the shrimp foil, is that a stretchy material or is that more like mylar?
Yeah. No, it's stretchy material. It's all that stuff is stretchy material. Now for the body, I'm using two different kinds of dubbing. For the orange spot, I'm using this awesome possum, which is not too spiky. And the reason I don't want that, when I stretch out the gills underneath, I don't want too much of the orange in that. I just want it around the body. So I'm using that. And then for the rest of the body, I'm using this synthetic living fiber from Davy Walton, but it's you can use any dubbing material that's got a little bit of flash in it and has some long fibers in it. So the one I'm going to do is going to be brown, green olive. I'll do the first one as olive. And for that, I start with olive thread, and I'm keeping the thread fairly fine. I want the high of the hook slightly down when I'm doing these so that I can get at the back of the hook. So we'll start right behind the eye with the thread. Oh, actually, let's go back a step. I keep forgetting. One of the things that they do with most of the patterns that I see for this guy is actually a weighted pattern. Get out of there. So I have some 020 lead-free wire, and I start with just a little bit bent over the edge of the back of the hook, pin it with my fingernail, and I'm going to do 8 or 9 wraps. Of the lead-free wire. And I have to cut this stuff because it's not soft like regular lead wire. And I'll munch all the lead wraps together and then use my fingernail to scrunch down the ends. Because it's like I say, it's not like lead wire, it's a little more brittle. And I'm going to place that roughly in the center of the bend of the hook. Now I'm going to put my thread on. Let's get some light here.
Sorry, Dave, what was the weight of that wire?
It's at 020.
Okay, got it.
And you could probably go a little thinner too, because this wire hook is pretty hefty, so it will sink. There's no two ways about it. So I get the thread started behind the eye, and I bring it up to about a third of the way down the hook, and that's where I'm going to start with the lead. And I'll wrap through the lead in between the wraps. And the purpose of that is just to kind of lock it in place so that it is not going to wander up and down the shank of the hook. This little end is in the way. There we go. And I'm going to come back in front, and I'm going to build just a little bit of a thread dam right in front of that lead wire. And then go back to the back, and I'll do the same thing at the back. I'm going to build a little dam of thread. And again, all that's doing is that it keeps the wire from migrating up and down the hook shank when I'm doing the dubbing and everything else. Bring my thread right to the back to halfway around the bend of the hook. Because these shrimp have an arched body. So I'm going to make sure it's well past where the hook starts to bend. I'm going to put the tail in. And to do that, I take a small number of fibers, probably half a gap width worth of fibers off the side of this feather. And I'm just going to snip off the curly bits at the end where I pulled it off, because they kind of get in the way when I'm tying it down. And I'm measuring a gap width behind where the thread is hanging. That's the length of the tail. Wrap that down on top with a pinch wrap, and then wrap up on the fibers. And one of the reasons I do that is it smooths the transition between the hook and the lead with the body of those fibers. Bring my thread up to the eye, and I'll do the same thing there, but just a slightly smaller number of fibers off of the feather there. And clean up the ends, because otherwise they don't sit nice on the hook. And I measure those quite short in front of the eye of the hook and tie them on top. There. Because these are just little antennae out the front of the shrimp. And again, wrap back the butt end so that it goes over that transition. Bring my thread right to the back again. Now, some guys use a really fine wire to give the ribbing on the hook, but I have not done that. What I've done on these olive ones is I'm going to take, if I want a prominent rib, I will use a piece of black thread, but I just want a minor ribbing. I don't want it to be too visible. I just want it to have that segmented appearance. So I'm just going to take a piece of white thread here, or you could use tan, I guess, or you could use nylon if you want. I'll tie that back in here so that it hangs out the back. So that's going to be the rib over top of the shell back. And then I'll tie in my shell back, which in this case is this stretchy olive scud back. And I cut off a little piece of it. It's maybe an inch and a half long. I don't want to have to be manipulating the whole long strand of it. And to tie this in, I trim the end of the scud back to a point, or try to anyway. It's not cooperating. There we go. So you can see I got a little point there. And that just makes it a little easier to tie a small piece in onto the hook shank. I hold it on the near side, the point on the near side of the hook, and then as I wrap over top, it'll cause that point of the scud back to sit on top of the hook. So that's what I want. I want it to sit on top of the hook and hang out the back. Then I'll come up to the middle, and this is where I put the Parasite. So I've got some orange fine dubbing. And I'm going to just take a little bit and spin it on the thread. A little bit of spit with these fine dubbings really helps it adhere to the thread. You can use wax if you want, but I think the wax tends to be make it a little more buoyant fly, and this is one you don't necessarily want to be too buoyant. So a little spit doesn't hurt. And all we do is we just wrap over top of the hook, right smack in the middle. We're going to build a little ball of orange dubbing, right smack in the middle of the shrimp. And wrap to the back with my thread when I'm done, all the way down to where the scud back is tied in. Now, for this guy, I'm going to use a sort of a rusty olive here material. I have tied them with the real green double, but this is kind of a mix. This one is called light olive. But I think you could use any kind of light olive covered dubbing. Take a little bit off, and I'm going to start at the back with a little bit of dubbing first and wrap it on. You can see this dubbing has a little shine to it. What some of the patterns use, they use that's what's called ice dub, which has a little more, even more shiny material in it than this. Now, as I build this this dubbing on, I'm going to start with it skinny at the bottom, at the end, and I'm going to maybe add a little more in the middle to fatten the dubbing rope up as it gets towards the bobbin. So I want it skinny at the very beginning, and I want it thicker when it gets to the point of the bobbin. You can see I've got a fair bit back here. So that's a couple of inches, about 3 inches, maybe 2.5 to 3 inches worth. And I will start right at the back of the scud back and wrap. And I make it a little bit thinner at the back than as I come up the shank of the hook. and start making it a bit more overlap and a little thicker as I get to the middle until I get right up nice and thick and about the same thickness as that center right behind the orange. Now, I don't want any, when I rough this out, it's going to have little hairs hanging down. So I don't necessarily want much in the way of orange hanging down because the parasite is in the middle of the insect. So what I do here is I take a chunk of green dubbing and I will take it underneath the orange and around in front and underneath and around behind. And I'm going to do that a couple of times, underneath, down in front, and underneath and around the back, underneath, around in front. Now what you'll see is I've now effectively put green underneath the orange. So you can see the orange is on the top and there's green underneath. And the point of that is now when I rough the material out the bottom, I'm going to be pulling out the green fibers and not the orange fibers. You'll see what I mean in a minute. And then I'm going to do the double here. I'm going to end up with it, the reverse of what the last thing I'm going to end up with. Thick in the middle and thinning it out to a finer rope at the end towards me. So that when I wrap forward, I'm going to end it up with it being a thick body right where the orange is, and it gradually skinnies out as I get towards the head of the insect. And when I get down to the very front, I'll have a fairly tight rope of dubbing and finish it off just behind where those antennae are. Pick up the stretch back and pull it over top. And I want to hold it in place. I want it to go right smack over the top of that, all that dubbing. So when I get to the eye of the hook, I'm just going to try to hold it in place with my thumb when I make that first loose wrap. And I have to spin the bobbin a bit here because, oh, poop. There you go. I have to spin the bobbin because it ends up unspinning the loop. So I get the soft loop. I want it to fall towards the back of the fly. So I have to spin my bobbin counterclockwise. There you go. Now hold it on the hook shank and put a loose wrap over top and pull that dubbing, the stretch down so it sits right on top of the hook. And then I pull it with my right hand a bit till it's nice and stretched and right on top of the dubbing body. Put 3 or 4 wraps right behind that. And then pull it back and stretch it and do 3 or 4 wraps in front. And now I can pull up on the stretch back and snip it. And then the little cut end disappears right down into the wraps. Take my thread from the back and go underneath at the back and then over top of the stretch back, making sure the stretch back is right on top of the hook, and wrap a couple in between over top of that orange and a couple in front, and then one more wrap right behind the eye of the hook. And then pull the thing back and wrap over top again, lock it in and trim it. And the last thing is do a whip finish. I'll do a double just to make sure, then I don't have to cement it, because cement in there might not do so well. Clog up the eye. cut off my thread. And now I'm not quite done. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to just trim off any fibers that stick out the sides or on the top. I'm going to trim them off straight on the sides so that it's nice. There's a nice clean, come on, get on there. My really stretch wrapped around the side. That was not good. I'll do another one with a wider material so it's not quite so. All my stretch wrap wound its way around the side of the hook. Now you can twist the whole dubbing noodle now so that you can try and get it back on top. Come on, get up there. Well, rats. Come on, get on there. There we go. Now it's back on top. So now, again, I'm going to trim on the sides, get all the little hangy bits off the side. My infamous Velcro on a stick, and I'll just go under here and I will scrub it back and forth underneath the hook and pull all those loose fibers out straight down from both ways, both directions. One that way, stretch it, and one this way. So I end up with all these fibers hanging straight down from the hook shank, the body. And then the last thing I do is I get my scissors and trim off the ones that extend just past the hook point and keep them relatively short. Just below the hook point, cut them off kind of flat. So there you go. That's the basic Scud. So like I say, if you have, you can use these more shiny materials as a back. So this one has a much more shiny material. That's this shrimp magic foil.
I like that foil. I just looked it up when you were tying.
Yep.
We could fly it in from UK.
Yeah. And it comes in a bunch of different colors. I've got like an olive and a gray and a sort of a clear. And then I've got a whole bunch of other of this stretch floss. I've got a whole bunch of other kinds that you can use on these types of shrimps. So I've got rainies. This one's a brownish color. I've got another brownish one. This one's kind of a latex. Looks like a surgical glove that's been cut up.
The
Yeah,
one
with
you use is really
got some
different
pink.
though than
I
the
got some
Scud
pink.
material.
You got some pink and some clear. And I
You
got
know,
some,
with the stretchy material,
Yeah.
you can buy from the fabric shop this clear elastic,
yeah,
and it looks exactly like that material. And I don't know if you remember Don Anderson's talk. He showed how to cut it, to basically put a blade in a vise and just pull the stretch
Just pull the
material against it, and
Yeah.
then just use a marker to get the color varieties if you have
Yeah.
markers already.
yeah. You can use these. Like I said, I've used these Letraset markers to do that. That's the other thing. Some of these little Scuds have eyes, and so if you've got a nice fine point, you can get in here and you can color the side of it black, so it looks like it's got an eye. So you end up with a black spot at the head, if you want to get real picky. So that's the basic Scud with the pregnant little bulge in the middle. And I've tied, what, 3, 6, 9 of them now. So they can go in my inventory of. So again, the stretch back, guinea fowl for legs, 2 different colors of dubbing, and a little bit of lead wire to weight the thing down, and you're done. So it doesn't take long to tie a bunch, and not a complicated pattern. Now to fish these things, the
Now,
general.
you tied a shrimp.
Yep.
Mike was talking about scuds, pregnant or infected scuds there on the weekend, eh?
Basically, they're
Parasite.
they're basically the same kind of thing. This is a parasitic scud, and I don't know what we call shrimp patterns, actual shrimp patterns that we use for saltwater fishing. That's a whole different ball of wax.
Yeah.
You're tying like mantis shrimp, right, Tony? There we go. We'll go off of remove the
I
spot.
tied a pregnant or a scud. I did this last year when I thought I was going into the interior,
Yeah.
but I didn't use your method. I didn't know how to do it. I just kind of used a different method.
Yeah, there's a couple of different methods. I've seen one where the orange in the middle is actually a bead. They use an orange bead, and then they stick a bigger bead at the front. But I kind of like this approach because it doesn't involve an additional material. Like it doesn't have to put the bead in the middle. And you can tie these down to a pretty small size.
That's your saltwater one, Dave,
Beg
right?
pardon?
That's
Yeah,
your
that's
classic salt.
mantis shrimp. Yeah, those
Yeah.
things. Yeah, and those are a lot more complex to tie.
Especially the
Some
eyes.
people do the freshwater ones with beads alone, and
Yeah.
then a shell back over the beads to kind of
Yeah.
give it I was just seeing a fellow at the club doing one of those just this Wednesday, just beads alone. The challenge there is to find a hook that will let you slip the beads over the bend, so that that's the only tricky part.
Yeah, I think, the general format back of these things. The other thing is, instead of using the shell back, what I've seen patterns done is to use these thicker UV resins, and then put because it's thick, it won't move around as much, and you put a really thin coat of UV resin on the back, and then zap it, and then put another coat on the back until you get up a nice shiny shell back with the UV resin. You wouldn't want to use the thin stuff because it would bleed into all of the fibers, and it wouldn't keep these legs underneath it. What are those, gills, I think? Gills or legs, I'm not sure. I'm not an entomologist, so I don't know what scuds are supposed to look like. So that's him. So Florin, you're on.
Oh boy, thank you.
So Florin's going to talk about his Spool Keepers.
All right, so as they say in Monty Python, now for something completely different. So here it is. If you tie enough flies, you end up with empty thread spools. And even if you don't tie enough to end up with empty thread spools, you still have tinsels, lead wire, various wires for ribbing, and so on and so forth. And it's a lot more. It's not just being a cheapskate and not wanting to cut a piece of wire off the spool to tie with and then throw a big piece away, but it's also, I find, making material handling a fair bit easier in some cases. And in particular, if you tie rotary and use a rotary vise, having some of these materials stay on the spool is a lot more convenient. Another place where this is convenient is if you weave flies and you use your weaving floss. If you keep it on the bobbin and you actually put it in a bobbin holder, it gives you a lot better control over some of for some of the weaving techniques. You can't do it for all, but in some cases. Okay, so that's the kind of the general motivation for why you would want to do this. The second thing you note pretty quickly is that not all spools are the same size. And here I'm having most of my materials are either uni or Danville. I have a few other odd sizes, but these are the main ones. And if you actually take and measure them, the uni thread is showing me 20.1 millimeters. And the Danville is significantly larger diameter, and it's showing here 22.2. I'm sure this is a reasonable measurement in imperial. So my suspicion is, that the unis are metric, the Danvilles are imperial. Regardless, one is thinner, the other one's thicker. And through experimentation, I've decided that cutting in good Canadian fashion, I'm going to mix metric and imperial here. I've decided that 3 inches of elastic is going to do a good spool keeper for a Danville spool. And I have it over here. Actually, these are pre-cut in a bag. 2 3/4 inches for uni and most other spools. Okay. You can also measure your spools, calculate exactly the circumference you want there. But remember, you want a little bit of snugness there. And you want to hit a little bit of a sweet spot, because too snug is going to make handling of materials like tinsel rather horrible. And you're going to get crinkly tinsel off the spool. You don't want that. So you want it snug, but not too snug. The other thing is, if you let these things sit by a window, I'm sure even in Victoria, eventually that elastic is going to degrade. So if you make a batch, you want to keep them in a Ziploc bag somewhere away from the elements, so to speak. Okay, what other ingredients do you need? Some super glue is handy, and I like to use this gel stuff because it's easy to work with, and for some mysterious reason, this is a packaging that actually holds the thing for a long time after you've opened it, which is not the case with a lot of these things. Then my beads. Well, the beads, again, if I take a bead, and this is one straight from the bead box, which I showed you, I keep them like this. The bead diameters, again, if I measure this, is just a shade over 9 millimeters. So I don't know if you can see properly here. This one it's actually a shade under. My calipers are saying 8.9, almost 9 millimeters, but a little under 9. And then the shrink tubing, here's the shrink tubing. If I measure it on the inside, is 14 or 15 millimeters. But what it says here on the tubing is a diameter of 9. And I suspect what this means is that this tubing shrinks to 9 millimeters when exposed to heat.
Yeah.
And this is just guesswork on my part. I did not go to verify that, on a spec sheet, that this is in fact the case, but it sounds reasonable. So 9 millimeter bead, shrink tubing that shrinks to 9 millimeters gives you, because of the extra thickness from the elastic, just gives you that good extra grip. Okay, so you don't want to just rely. So the shrink tubing does 2 things. It's extra insurance in case of the super glue not holding all that well, and also it's tidying up over the place where you glued in the elastic, so it looks all kind of nice and tidy, right? Okay, so manufacturing. Well, you start, of course, by measuring some elastic and cutting to size. And I already cut to size a bunch of 3-inch pieces. And then you take your beads, and some of these are the slightly thicker toothpicks that are sort of flat on one side, and they're kind of a triangular profile. Any wooden stick of appropriate size is going to work. And the reason I like the wood is because it's going to be softer than the bead. That's the main point. So slide the, this is going to help keeping the super glue away from your fingers, which is an important consideration. Okay, I don't play it very safe here. I have no debonder, so if anything happens during this presentation, you know,
Yeah,
I'll be stuck for a while.
I was just going to remark for those guys in Victoria, if you go to the hobby store in Hillside Mall, they have all the super glue types you need, but they also carry what's called flashback, which is an accelerant, and they also carry a debonder. If you're working with super glue, it pays to have a debonder around, because you just put it on your fingers when you get the super glue on your fingers, and it keeps your fingers from getting stuck to something.
Yeah, and the other thing I've understood about these cyanoacrylates is that humidity is a bit of an accelerant. So
yeah,
I don't know how much of an accelerant really maybe I need some in Edmonton in the winter. You guys probably less so. But anyway, this I buy this one at Canadian Tire.
yeah.
And it's worked well for the limited amount of use I make of it. Okay, the other piece of equipment here is a little bit of sandpaper. Now this is 100 grit. You don't want to get coarser than this. You also don't want to get too fine. So I think, you know, down to 180 maybe is okay. Much finer than that you don't want. You want some cutting power here. So all I do is I rough up a little bit of the side of the bead on two opposite sides. So I just rub this on the sandpaper on one side, and that does two things. It gives me a little bit of a rough surface for the super glue, and it also gives me a little bit of a flat surface on the round bead. And this way I feel I'm getting better contact and better gluing. Just rub this off, and again, I just do a bunch of these at a time, right? So in this case, I have a bunch of pre-sanded beads, and I'm going to, you know, in this sitting, I'm not on the presentation, but today I'm just going to finish off these because I'm kind of running a little bit low on some of these. Okay, now for the gluing part. So this is the preliminary. So you pre-cut, and again, you kind of work out the dimension you want there. You want a little bit more than just the size of the bead. So I go, because remember, this thing shrinks not just in diameter, but in length as well, a little bit. So I want, at the end of the day, I want my bead to be well covered. I want it to go just a little bit over the top there, so it kind of encircles the bead properly and it's nice and snug. So again, experimentation is going to tell you how much you want to cut these. In this particular case, you can see I'm somewhere between 8 and 9 millimeters. Okay, you don't have to, this is not an exact science. So it's, you just experiment with and find out what works for you best. Okay, so the gluing, and this is where the toothpicks are really useful, is this. You take a little bit of, you take your super glue and you put a small dab of super glue on one side where you roughed it up with a sandpaper. Then you turn this around and you put a little dab of super glue on the other side. And then you take the bead and you place it so that the elastic does not go beyond the bead once it's glued in place. So you hold it down like this, and then the other side you just bring on top with your finger and press on it. Okay, like this. Okay, so this is what you want to end up with. Something like this. Okay, and then you prepare a bunch of these things. You do all the gluing at once, right? So you don't keep your glue uncapped for too long or anything like that. So once you have a bunch of these things done, and you can do different sizes if you need for different size spools, then you take the cut shrink tubing and you slide it on top just a little bit beyond the bead. Okay, and you'll become very quickly a good judge of what it means slightly beyond the bead. Okay, so here's what I end up with. It looks like this. Okay, and then I'm gonna have 15, 20 of these things ready made. And when I reach that point, I reach out for my heat gun. Okay. Now here you have to be careful not to overcook the thing and not to burn yourself either. So the other useful tool is a pair of forceps. So grab the elastic and then turn on your heat gun and move this thing around. As you can see how it's shrinking, and it's shrinking here at the top around the bead a little bit. And you keep turning it around until you're satisfied that this thing has done its job. And then you move on to the next one. And before you know it, all your material spools are going to have a spool keeper. Okay, just let them cool off a little bit, because right now this thing is a little. I didn't follow my own advice. I went a little aggressive on this. This is. I'm afraid I melted a little bit of stuff. Oh well. Anyway, just let it cool off, and you're good to go. And the other place to use it is not just on material spools. My tippet spools have this as well.
I was just
Because
gonna.
the ones that come with your tippet spools, in my experience, you know, like Rio, whatever, is just a piece of elastic with a little brass thing in it, and that elastic goes bad very, very quickly.
Yeah, I actually went out to the garage and got some to show you here. I've got that, and that came to my mind is the tippet spool ones. They tend to go when they're out in the sun, like you say. The elastic tends to go.
I replaced them all.
Yeah.
I have the exact same thing, and I replaced all those things. And the other thing to remember here is write on your elastic before you do this, because you can write the size of your tippet on the elastic, and of course it's easier to do with white, and you know, like a regular pen is gonna do it. Okay, it's not gonna look as spiffy as the commercial thing, but it's definitely gonna be better lasting. I've had the homemade keepers on my tippet, and I have yet, I think out of 4, 5, 6 tippet spools, only one of them finally gave up the ghost. And what gives up on you is the elastic eventually is no longer holding properly. And what you do at that point actually is you can cut off the shrink tubing and the elastic away and reuse the bead. just make a new one. And that's that. Next week, I guess I'll take a minute or two to remind you of the various uses for these things. So maybe show you wrapping tinsel, ribbing with wire, and also placing lead wire on the hook at the beginning of the whole process, straight off the spool. And that's
So,
that.
So here's the standard tippet spools all stacked together with the elastic bits on them. And as you can see, they get quite soft. Now, at one time you could buy them from Rio, but I think, I forget what those were priced, but they also will go in over time in the sun. So yeah, this is a great idea. I may actually get set up to make a bunch for my tippet spools.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
even if you don't
I've made,
necessarily
one-
want it for your materials, that's, and I haven't done any for fly lines. I guess if you have problems with things unraveling on you, you know, anytime you have a problem like that, it helps.
Yeah, I've made a bunch of those for tippet spools as well, but I have some that were wider. So I actually bought wider elastic.
Yeah.
And I have to look at them again. I did it a little differently than you. I didn't use a bead, but it actually works well. I think I actually overlapped the elastic, if I remember correctly. I sewed one edge and then I sewed the other edge. So in between, there's actually a pocket, and you can actually pull the tippet out and slide it between that, and then it always sort of holds it in place once you've cut it, so it doesn't slide back in.
Okay.
I like that. And what you do with the beads and the elastic, you can go with slightly bigger beads and wider elastic if you have materials that are really thick, which allows you to get it on and off the spool more easily as well. Then.
Mhm.
Yeah, the small beads I'm using actually have a pretty large hole. Let me try to measure the hole on this thing, because it's material thickness was never a problem with this. You can go up to fairly thick yarn. So my measurement here reads like 3.5 millimeters in diameter for the hole. That's gonna let through
Most materials, yeah.
pretty thick stuff. But yeah, I can see that on a tippet spool, if your elastic is too narrow. And by the way, this is the standard, so to speak, what do they call it, 6 millimeters, or yeah, so it's a 6 millimeter wide, but you can get, so this is the standard stuff, and I have slightly wider, which is, what does it say on the package? 57% polyester. Well, that's not helping. 13 millimeters. So it's more than double the width of the other one. But to make it work with this,
Yeah.
so I guess with your system of sewing, wider is better. If you're,
Yes.
I think that the 13 millimeter is going to work on a like standard spool of fishing line kind of stuff, and I
Yeah.
use that too. I use like that strand blue fluorescent for tippet a lot. But then if you do a bead with it, you want a bigger bead.
Yeah, exactly.
This
And,
would be
and
easier
in fact,
sewing, yeah.
I had bought the Berkeley Vanish fluorocarbon, but in the 100 meter spools. And so those are thicker spools, and that was great to use the wider band on that because it just controls the elastic better.
Yeah, it's much better. Yeah, I agree.
So to carry on with that whole idea, over the last few years, instead of having multi-pockets in my vest, I've gone to a lanyard. You can buy these lanyards that have beads and little places to hook things on. It sits around your neck. And one of the things you can put on the lanyard is this bit here. And what this is it's a piece of threaded nylon that takes a nylon nut and a washer, cut to the right length, and then I just flattened off one of the ends here and drilled a hole through so that it collects on your lanyard. So you can have all your tippet spools hanging down at the bottom, your forceps off of one, your nippers off of another, and I've got a hook sharpener as well. And all that stuff hangs around your neck.
And it's brilliant because it frees up pockets in your vest that you can fill up with other stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So there are two things. One apparently is, as I was told, when you walk on the stream, you sound like you're carrying a cutlery tray.
Yeah.
And it kind of sounds like that, you know, I listened to it. And then, it's you have to be careful because you very quickly end up being overloaded. So the original idea for this is to be more minimalistic.
Yeah.
And what I ended up doing is actually kind of overloading. So every now and then I have to go through an edit on this thing. You can also add extra little clips so you can hang more stuff. But after long days fishing, you can actually feel the extra weight.
Yeah, you don't want to have too much on a lanyard because they will tend to get tied up with one another. But so all I keep on it is a pair of forceps, a pair of nippers, a sharpener, and a spool thingy. And these things, they you can actually they snap off and on with things that clip. So I forget who makes that particular product, but it's pretty useful.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
seen.
you can make one yourself. It's not
Yeah,
that.
you could make
Oh,
it
yeah.
yourself. It's not magic.
Yeah, I've
But
seen a
that's
lot
all
of
because all they've
different-
got here is basically a swivel with a snap hook onto a piece of nylon cord, and the beads just separate things. You could probably don't even need the beads. You could probably just with knots, so stuff doesn't slide around.
You can get really fancy ones that'll hold your lunch bag plus like 3 other rods and stuff like that too.
Well,
Or you can hang a fly box too, because you
Then I
have
can-
these fly boxes with little loops at the ends.
Yeah.
But that makes me nervous about losing flies. I don't like the idea.
Well, one of the other things I discovered is if you've got that thing around your neck when you're trying to do a double spay, that spool tends to get in the way.
Yes.
Yeah, once your fly line is tangled up in your lanyard, now you're in for some fun, especially if there's a fish at the other end.
Yeah, if there's a 14-pound coho at the end and it catches on that spool, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. Remember I told you I lost one of my, I had one of my good fly tying tools die on me the other day with my bodkin where the needle broke off right smack on the end. So that was the nice little tool that I had that unfortunately is no more.
Yeah, well, you
that
know, a
describes-
very nice bodkin that I
Yeah.
bought. I can't remember where I got it, and I've been looking for a backup ever since, and they don't seem to be available at all.
No.
Tiemco makes a bodkin that's got like a hexagonal handle like that.
Yeah.
And it's got a fine point that's also a little bent to one side. So it's actually quite handy if you want to put like a bead of glue in a very precise spot or anything. But for some reason, those things are like hen's teeth. I looked around a fair bit. I think you might be able to get them directly from Japan, but online shopping from Japan kind of requires some knowledge of the language. So it's
Dave,
not...
I think I got these they have that same thing and they got the needle. I think I got these at Robinson's.
Yeah. This one has a hefty weight end. The nice thing about this
Oh,
little
that's a
one,
fancy one, yeah.
yeah, what nice thing about this little one is it had this this tapered end with a hole in it that you could use
These,
as a
these are tapered. Oops, there they are.
yeah, and you can, and it's got a hole in the end. You can use it as a half hitch tool. So yeah, finding those would be nice.
I find I have to take some fine grit sandpaper and clean them off every once in a while for the
Oh.
glue.
That's what this is. This is very fine
Steel
steel
wool?
wool. You just, it takes all the glue off them.
Usually I have 3 of them on the go. So I usually take them out, burn off the glue and then sand them nice and shiny and then bring them back in.
And then if I'm carrying it in a toolkit, I have this little piece of pencil eraser that I stick on the end so I don't damage the point. Oh, well, all the little tricks you come up with over the years.
Slices of cork, if you take a wine cork and you
Yeah.
cut, you cut across slices, right? So they're like little discs. You just poke your needle in that and it holds. The other thing to protect you from sharp things, and I don't have any handy here, is the foam end of a Nerf dart gun. The first time I discovered this was by chance. It was just some of these things were like after a kid's party, whatever, were lying around the house, and I was like, wait a second, I can see a use for this. So, you know, like for example, your fine tip scissors that you want to be taking good care of, the tips get entirely hidden inside that foam sleeve, and they're quite well protected.
You know that these Dr. Slick scissors now, these nice ones, they're over $45.
$20 a pair for anvil scissors. I swear by them.
Yeah.
They're very good, and I like the especially because I like to tie with scissors in hand. And I
That's,
don't have very large hand. I like the small 3.5-inch scissors.
and I like the ones with
Actually,
the,
the ones that they use at the hatchery to clip fish, they are super sharp and really fine blade.
Mhm.
They're really, they're great. I don't
What
know.
brand are those? Do you know?
I don't actually know. I'll try and find out because I've been meaning to go and get a couple because I find the ones that I've been buying, I mean, even these fancy schmancy ones from Robinson's, I don't find it's got a fine enough tip.
No, you
Yeah.
want the smaller ones, you know, like the it's both the thinness of the blades, and they kind of go a little bit in proportion to the size of the scissors. That's why I go.
Yeah.
Thompson in the old days used to make a really nice and very expensive pair of fine scissors, but those haven't been available for well over 20 years, I think.
Yeah.
And the closest thing that I found to those are the anvil scissors. And those you can still find, if you look around a little bit, you'll find a retailer selling them around $20 a pop.
yeah.
I never
that's
tried the
what-
curved ones, but the
Yeah.
straight ones are good.
Yeah, this set here, these were Pakistani manufactured, and I think they were originally made as corneal scissors for eye surgeons. And I got these cheap because they came from Pakistan and they've lasted well. But
I
the
think
curved
the
was
ones,
gonna
anvils are
say,
made in the States.
these are Dr. Slicks, and they're made in the States, and they're the curved ones. And I like those if I'm tying with my scissors in my hand, because the point curves over top of your finger, so it's out of the way when you're holding onto the bobbin. It
Right.
doesn't run anything.
Yeah, I was gonna say the place to get specialty scissors and stuff would be a surgical supply place.
Yeah.
Because they have really good quality stuff. There was a place in Ottawa that I knew that had all kinds of surgical supplies. I don't
Yeah.
know any place here, unfortunately, but there must be some place.
So some wholesaler would sell them to the medical profession, I would guess.
Yeah, there was a place in Ottawa that sold all kinds of stuff, like first aid stuff and medical and surgical supplies, needles for people who are diabetics and whatever else. And they had quite a good selection. So I don't know if there'd be anything on the island. I'm guessing Vancouver probably has something, but I don't know about on the island.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Anyway,
I stole some of my dad's supplies when he retired.
there you go.
Well, that's whatever it takes, right?
Yep. You acquire by whatever means possible.
Exactly. I mean, it's like, don't stand between me and my coffee and between me and my fly tying, right?
Yep.
The
Just find a
golden-
good doctor friend and go visit them and sneak a scissor or two every time you go and visit. They'll just have to replace it. It's a cost of business for them. So
No, in the current climate, if I get to see a doctor, I'm gonna ask them, "Hey, buddy, do you have any friend who's taking new patients?"
that's right.
You know, I'm not gonna. And then here, you know, can I return all the scissors I stole over the years because they're weighing
That's
on my
right.
conscience? Yeah, I know. It's
Well, I wouldn't be able to get any from my brother, even though he's retired now, because the stuff he used as an oral surgeon was a little less delicate than the kind of scissors we're talking about.
That's right. Yeah, those were a little
Chisels
more
and
robust.
hammers at times.
But times have changed. I used to get dental tools from a buddy of mine. And now the dental tools are sent back and
Yeah,
refurbished.
refurbished. Yeah.
So now they only replace the tips.
But with handles, I guess you can, you know, if you have just needles and things, you can also take a piece of crooked wood from your wood pile or something and just whittle it away in some
Just some hardwood dowels work.
comfortable, you know, something that fits your hand nicely, you know, just for fun.
Well, when I first got into fly tying eons ago, I made a lot of my own tools. So I had a little dowels that I shaved flat on one end, and I put a piece of Velcro on there. At the other end, I put heavy mono, and I wrapped it onto the end so that it would form a loop for doing different things. I made half hitch tools using old pen, like the old big pen blanks that had the what do you call it, the ink in the plastic tube go in there. I made half hitch tools out of those, so I got quite inventive with stuff when I was young.
Yeah.
Well, those things are still useful for, you know, packing hair and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And with a half hitch tools, actually, I've been experimented with Dave Cook's method of just wrapping around the finger and putting the knot on. And I started to do that because when I use the rotary vise, every now and then it's surprising how many cases you can get away with not putting a knot on when you tie rotary, but sometimes you do. And
you can use a one finger method or a two finger method like this, or just use one, right?
I've been using the one finger method a fair bit, and I have to say thank you.
You got to remember that I learned to tie flies using a cork in a wine bottle in my hands. If I couldn't do it by my hands, and I had a decent pair of scissors that I stole from my mother, needlepoint, and I used to tie them right on the river and match the hatch without realizing what I was doing. But yeah, sometimes you can be inventive.
Be careful about talking to non-fly fishing people about the one finger method.
That's okay. One finger method, two finger method, you heard it. Yeah.
I'm tying up some flies now for the Peninsula Stream box donation.
Yeah, so I gave Tony a couple of bags of flies to take out to the hatchery. Did you get them delivered?
I did. They
Good.
were delivered yesterday. Day
Excellent.
before yesterday. They were picked up yesterday.
Yeah, good.
So whom do you donate the flies to?
It's to Peninsula for Peninsula Streams auction.
Oh, okay. It's
You
a
can look them up
fundraising-
online, Florin, Peninsula Streams.
Mhm.
They're sort of we're not, because of our more senior age, we don't really go and clear streams anymore. We can volunteer, but they actually get the work done, and we contribute them often some seed money to get them started on projects.
Mhm,
They do a fantastic job. I mean, they really,
Yeah, they do.
mhm. Okay.
they're responsible for the fish ladders in Millstream and the
And
restoration.
Bill's quite involved in it.
Wasn't Bill
Oh,
Thomas?
Brian is.
Wasn't
too.
Bill Thomas on the show this morning for a little while?
No?
Yeah, he was
Yep, he was.
Oh, I didn't see him.
Yep, he was on.
So,
He
yeah,
was
they,
supposed to be going to the river with West Coast Fly Fishers.
Oh,
Yes,
that was today, wasn't it?
yeah, they were talking about doing that today.
he told me he was going to be on the Cowichan River today.
Yeah, he was planning, I thought he was planning on doing that. They were gonna meet up at some place, and whoever was doing it, the West Coast Fly Fishers, are gonna supply the Tipperton leader material for you to fish.
I got one roll done. Anyways, yeah, no, I was talking to Zach, and he said he's been doing quite well with the rainbows on the Cowichan.
Yeah.
And I was in Duncan yesterday. There's quite a good run of water on the river there, and it's not clear water either. So if you're fishing up there, you'd have to use a very bright fly, I would suggest.
But the river must be pretty high, isn't it, right now?
It is.
Yeah.
It
There's
is.
got a lot
It
of
was
water going over
higher
the dam.
before, but it's high,
Yeah.
spring level high. Not monsoon river high, like before it was all flooded everywhere. You'd have to fish in the farmer's field for your fish.
Yeah, the monsoon has passed. There's nobody kayaking in Gyro Park right now. Although yesterday there was a flock of about 100 widgeons that were back out in the middle of the field there.
They're a beautiful bird. Did you ask them for some feathers?
Actually, there were a couple of green-winged teals out there I thought about trapping.
Well, sometimes they'll pluck their own feathers and grooming themselves, eh?
I think I'd have gotten in
Yeah.
trouble because that piece of the beach is still a bird sanctuary.
There you go. Anyways, thanks, Dave and Florin. I gotta go,
Alrighty.
but I'll
Yeah,
have to try one of those.
I think
cool
we're
feathers, and-
done. Yeah.
Yeah, and the shrimp was very interesting. Especially those hooks.
Yeah,
Good,
you know,
thanks.
if you use the both Togan and Tiemco and Daiichi make this Scud hook, and they're much more true to size. You know, going back to Dave's earlier comment about these partridge hooks being like gigantic. You know, if you get from these three other manufacturers, they're a bit more what you would think a size 10 is more of a little bit more of a size 10. And they do come both in light and heavy wire. You have a choice.
The heavy wire Scud hooks that Togans have are excellent. They're
Yeah.
very strong, and they come, they don't have any, you know, they're a straight hook. There's nothing on them, but they're a
They're a
great hook.
very
I think
those are a
they're-
very heavy wire actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have some of
I
those.
really like them, and they sink well.
I use them
Anyways,
to tie just regular nymphs on them as well.
So speaking of shrimp, we should probably see if we can con Tony into tying a Samantha shrimp.
Long way away from that, Mr. Robinson.
Yeah. you need
I could do
the,
I'm doing that flexo crab, but
yeah. I actually, when I was scrounging around for some material that was donated to the Hague Brown guys for this kid that I was teaching, who's decided to take a break from it, I found that a box that's got some EP fiber in it.
mhm.
So if you're interested in picking up some EP fiber, I might have some for you.
I think I've got some, but I'm not sure. I'll have to
Yeah,
check.
there were a couple of different colors there that nobody's using, and they were donated material. So,
Oh,
and what else was in there? The one thing that I don't think anybody's ever going to use is there's a box of wing cutters.
wing cutters.
Wing cutters, they're little wooden handles that have a razor blade, shaped razor blade at the bottom to cut different shapes of insect wings out of plastic material.
Huh.
Weird.
Yeah, I've also seen the ones that come in a 3-pack with, so 3 different sizes. It's like a tweezer, a brass tweezer that's shaped, and you actually put a feather in there and you burn off the edges.
Yeah, wing
and it
burners,
gives you
yeah.
the shape.
Well,
Yeah.
those are wing burners, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And those I've seen. You can make those yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing for those shrimp is you need to make the eyes, and I figured out how to do that with a pair of tweezers and my lighter to
Right there.
form a bunch. Yeah, there you go. Did you
Just
make
about-
those?
Yeah, I'm about to tie
Good.
some crabs.
Yeah.
So
So how did you get the pink colors?
it's just solar rays.
Oh, you just put a dab of resin.
It's that dab of solar rays, and then I just put a little pupil on it.
Oh yeah, okay, cool.
I just melt them.
Yeah, but I'm using 100-pound mono.
80-pound for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Melt it down, and like I say, I've got a pair of old tweezers like these that have a long handle that are kind of flat on the end, and I
Right.
just stick it in there and this melt, and you're done. I use that for the little dumbbell eyes in plastic, and then if you just do one side, you can use them for the the shrimp eyes.
Yeah, and it works really well. I mean, it takes a little while to perfect getting a round blob.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, you
Yeah.
tend to sometimes put the flame too close to the mono, and it just like shrivels up.
Yeah. Shrivels up and falls off on the floor,
Yeah, exactly.
which you don't want to do on the carpet. Let me tell you.
No, that would not be a good idea.
I'm surprised you're allowed
Somebody
to
might
buy
yell
where
at
you
you.
tie that.
Oh, dear.
Dave, before I leave, if anybody does decide to get anything at Teddy's, would you please just drop me an email so I know what to pick up when I
Yep.
go through on Tuesday?
We can do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll just take the time to thank you both. I appreciate it.
All right.
Talk to you
No
soon.
problem.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Prince.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay,
See you
take
guys.
care.
Do we have a plan for next week?
I have to think what I'm going to do next week.
Because I have so I can finish talking about the uses and abuses of spool keepers, and then I wanted to get started on tying some tiny flies on using the Scud hooks that
Oh, yeah.
basically give you, it's essentially, if you look at the Scud hook, the standard, not the partridges, okay? So we're talking about
Yeah.
available hooks. Like the ones that Dave Cook was mentioning, you know, the Togans, which are very
Yeah.
heavy wire. They're kind of an ideal nymph hook. They're effectively like a short shank hook. So if you want to, you know, like a lot of your nymphs, you know, 16s and 18s are good sizes for streams. And the advantage with those hooks is you can use a size up in the hook, and it's much more comfortable to tie on the tippet to everything. Hooking fish is better, and so on. You know.
So what about this guy?
Is that an Evil Weevil?
Weevil, yeah.
Yeah, you can do Evil Weevil, and I can do one or two of the smaller ones, like the stream midges, and I have a pink fly that I don't know might be adaptable to other uses than whitefish too.
Okay, well I'll
I'll think about those.
Okay, gents, have a good week, and
Yep.
I'll talk to you soon, Dave, about going up to Hanina.
Yeah, just drop me an email or just give me a call.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
We'll chat because you'll
Take care,
get eventually.
Florent. Good to see you again. And
Yeah. So Mohammed, eventually you will get a missive from Hanina that tells you all about things to take and things to worry about when you go up. It's a fairly long one, but it gives you a fair bit of detail.
okay.
But that'll be a while. But you might want
Okay.
to. There'll be some questions you'll want to answer anyway. Like
Yep.
just what kind of clothing to take and what not to take that you don't need to take, because they've got a pretty extensive list of material that, clothing and stuff that you can use.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know.
We'll go through that. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Good.
And you'll be flying from Vancouver to Prince Rupert through them, and then you're doing a flyover from here to
Yeah,
Vancouver.
that's what I've done the last few years, because just schlepping your baggage and getting the flight timings right,
Yeah.
pain in the butt, particularly coming back if you're coming back with 60 pounds of fish, you don't want to sitting in the airport for half a day.
That's right, exactly.
And they'll check it right through, which is nice, both going and coming. That you don't have to schlep any bags around in Vancouver.
Yeah,
It's
that's
a little
right.
last year the bloody return flight to Vancouver was expensive. Wow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but we'll see what flight prices are like when they're trying to get customers back.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to
exactly.
book that for a while yet. We'll wait to see what's happening with COVID. You'd probably want to book probably a couple of months in advance
Yes.
just to get a decent price.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't do any more than that. So, end of May or June, you might want to think about booking that flight.
That's right. Yeah,
Then
and
we'll know
I'm also going to check with points about flying from here all the way up to Rupert, depending on how many points I need. So that
Yeah.
may be a possibility that it do it all in one.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a direct flight from here to get you to Rupert.
If you
No,
guys
you'd
had
have
the
to go through
time,
Vancouver.
if
You
you
have to go
guys
through
had the time, you should just get in the car, take the ferry from Port Hardy, chaga. It's gonna take you a lot longer, but from what I understand, it's a super scenic trip all the way.
Yes, it is. But then you have to overnight in Rupert.
Yeah, and actually, I'm in July. We're actually doing a trip up the Haida Gwaii. So
Yeah,
we're
I
doing a
heard.
driving trip going all the way across from Nanaimo to Horseshoe Bay, all the way up to Prince Rupert, and then across to Skidegate, and then staying, I think, about 8 or 9 days on Haida Gwaii, and then
Yeah.
coming back to Rupert and coming down to Hardy, Port Hardy via the Inside Passage. So yeah, I'm going to be doing that trip anyway.
So you're gonna take the ferry on the way down?
Yep.
Oh,
So
wow.
If
Good for
if-
you. I've had that on my to-do list for ages and never got around to it. So
Same here. So we've
So-
had that on the list for a long time, and I'm looking forward
So
to it.
if you're going to overnight in Rupert and you're there at the right the right time, go to the local Aboriginal museum in Rupert. It's
Oh,
in
okay.
Rupert. It's fabulous. It's small, but it's really nice.
Okay.
Got some nice artwork in it. Yep.
Yeah, I'll definitely put that on the list. Barry Freeman.
Yep.
So he had told me, because I'd sent that general email out to people on GRR to ask if anyone has any advice or been up there. So his brother lived up in Prince Rupert, not in Prince Rupert, on Haida Gwaii, worked for
Yeah.
Fisheries and Oceans. I'm talking about 4 to 5 decades ago.
Yeah.
But he went for a visit about 3 or 4 years ago again. And so I met with him and Barry, and he gave me a ton of advice and places to see and things to do in that.
Uh-huh.
So that
Good.
was really great. And I picked up one of the backroads maps from MEC on Haida Gwaii, which is really detailed. So I've definitely got a bunch of stuff there. But that's good to know about Prince Rupert, because we will be spending, I think, two nights in Prince Rupert as well,
Right.
consecutively, so that we'll have a full day to explore the area.
Yeah.
So
Because going to Honey now, we don't even see, we see Prince Rupert across the bay from the airport.
yeah, exactly.
Because there's where the ferry from downtown to the airport docks is where the float planes or the boat that we go on.
Oh, okay. Okay.
No, I don't think we'll be flying. Sure, I think they'll be running the water taxi
Yeah.
service. It's just, I think it's probably a little cheaper for them to do that than to run 3 float planes in with the crew change.
Yeah.
But it
That's
depends on the timing. Sometimes it's easier for them to run the planes from
Yeah.
a time perspective. But because otherwise they gotta, they're hauling the outgoing guests to the airport, and then they gotta haul the incoming guests back out to the lodge.
That's right. Yeah.
So, but last year we got to fish probably till about 11 o'clock on Friday morning on the way out before we came out.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. And then it's because the flight back is at some god awful 3. So you come back, you get your fish processed, and you have lunch, and then they load you on the boat to take you back to
Okay.
the airport. Yeah.
Okay. That sounds good.
It's
Yeah,
about an hour. It's about hour and a bit by boat. It's about 30 minutes by air.
Okay. Yeah. And then when I come back the next day, we're leaving to go up to Klaksui as well. So we've got a cottage up there for 5
There you
nights.
go.
So
There
Oh,
you
you
be a
got
lot
a
of
nice,
back-to-back
you got
stuff,
a
but
nice
that's fine.
plan.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Yep. Yep. Oh, I know. I definitely want to do a lot more exploring of the province and fishing places and that. And another trip I want to do is up to the Yukon, which will be another driving trip. I want to do that maybe next year.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's if you take that backside, the Cassiar Highway,
Yes.
there's no place to stay, so you kind of either have to camp or have a camper
Yep.
van sort of thing.
Yep.
But it's a gorgeous drive, and then make sure you don't miss that little piece where you can cross in the US without a border check.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And if you go at the right time of year, the grizzlies might be showing up for the salmon.
Okay.
There's a little piece of national forest there. It's at the head of an inlet,
Okay.
and it's quite spectacular. But I mean, it's a long drive. I did it once coming up from Alberta on the Alaska Highway
Okay.
up to just to the Yukon. We didn't get into the Yukon, just stopped in
Oh,
Watson
okay.
Lake,
Yeah.
and then
Mhm.
just did a U-turn and came down on the Cassiar Highway, and then
Nice.
all the way down to Prince Rupert, and then back
So that
took
trip,
Highway 16 back home, basically.
so from
Yeah.
that trip from Rupert, you got to go up to Watson Lake to get into the Yukon.
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
yeah. There's no
Well,
other. That's that, and basically,
I've never
you do that. You
driven
connect to
that.
the Alaska Highway at that point.
I never driven that, but back in the 70s, I worked for a company that had an office in Whitehorse, and we did work at Fort St. John, Watson Lake, Liard, Faro.
Yeah,
I
there is
I got
actually.
I got all the way up to Dawson City.
Yeah, that little section there along the Alaska Highway in northeastern BC.
Yeah.
You drive past some pretty nice grayling water
Yeah.
Yes.
where you
that's right.
basically you can just park on the side of the road and walk to the stream not too far. And
Yeah.
I know what on this drive I stopped and I was with the family and nobody else in my family fishes, as in my wife and kid, right? So I had limited time and opportunity to do so, and we're in this stupid RV thingy because we wanted to try what it's like with an RV. So I kind of had limited mobility and all kinds of constraints there because of it.
Yeah.
But I know I stopped in a couple of places in that area. I think it was in the Liard area.
Okay.
And well, okay, there were two things. This was back in 2007, maybe.
Okay.
2007 or 2008. The dollar was nearly at par,
Yes.
and there were no Americans.
Oh, okay.
There was no traffic, but at the same time, I think our stupid RV had come up to needing an oil change.
Okay.
And you know, when you rent the thing, they say, well, you know, here's your mileage, and when you come up to an oil change, you just do it. Okay, that's part of the deal.
Yeah, the cost of
And so I think our mileage for an oil change came up in Fort St. John.
Mhm.
Well, not only was the dollar at par, but this was at the peak of the bloody oil and gas boom.
Oh,
So I walked into every single garage in Fort St. John, and every single one of them said, "Oh yeah, if you can wait a week, we can try to squeeze you in." And so we kept going, and I said, you know, this thing is not gonna. It was like a gigantic, you know, like one of these RVs on a Ford F-350 chassis.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Those engines, you know, they go forever. So I wasn't too concerned about that. So I said, you know, I told my wife, let's just drive on, because this isn't gonna, you know, this is not realistic. We're still too close to Alberta here. Forget it.
Yeah, that's right.
So we kept going, and I think we could do it. I don't know if it was Watson Lake or there was a little town before that, which was outside of the oil boom area. No problem. In fact, the guys there at the service station, there was an American chap with one of these bus RVs.
Yep.
Who also needed an oil change, and the guy said, forget about that guy. He can wait. That I'll take you in first, because also I think that was a bigger job. It took longer.
Yeah.
So he was like, okay, you guys are small fry. I'll do you first.
That's right.
And then I'll do the, you know, but it was instant, right? It was like, oh yeah.
Yep.
I said, so how long do I have to wait? Because I was already, my expectations have been moved by the experience back in Fort St. John. And the chap was like, oh no, right away, here, please drive in, sir. I'm like, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
well, the coldest I ever been in my life was in 1979, and the company I was with had sent me up to look at a exploration mine that Hudson Bay Mining was doing
Dave,
up in
you
McMillan.
can stop recording, by the way.
Oh yeah, I should. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, you're gonna have to do some editing, because I think you've been recording all the chit chat at the end.
Yeah, do that.
That's right.